Hello, Peace Corps Thailand, and anyone else who is tuning in. This is going to be a presentation on positive discipline. So basically, this month's theme, so last month's theme was pronunciation. This month's theme is going to be classroom management. So the idea that we had as the curriculum team was really to have a theme per month and hopefully kind of spark discussion and hopefully talk about best practices and kind of just chat about the theme, right? And be able to kind of help each other become better teachers. So in the little chat area, I included all the links that you'll need. So the first link is the presentation resources, where you'll find the presentation that I'll be doing today, the PowerPoint or the PDF version, and as well as the, what else is there? Okay, so as well as the mistaken goals chart, and also a little PDF version of what positive discipline is. So you can go there, both session 1, which is this session, as well as session 2, which is going to be next week, next Friday at the same time. Next week's session is going to be about classroom tools. So it's going to build off of what we talk about today, but talk more about best practices, how you can utilize positive discipline ideas in the classroom. So that'll be next week. Also, in the chat area, I included a link to the Google forum. So this is something new that we're trying out. We want to, talk more about classroom management, pronunciation, teaching English in Thailand in general. So if you click that link, you can go to the forum, and up there I've already posted a question basically about asking you, like, what do you do in your classroom? And maybe if you could share a little bit, and all of us shared a little bit, we can kind of get a feel of what's going on at other people's sides, in other people's classrooms, and kind of get some ideas, bounce ideas off of each other. But yeah, let's experiment with that. If you can kind of just go onto that and see what you can add or contribute. I've also added a video to the 6 core strengths, which is something I'm going to be talking about. It's kind of like a theory developed by Bruce Perry, which is kind of talking about child development from the very beginning, when children are kind of developing affiliation with their parents or the loving caregiver, and kind of moves all the way until they kind of are able to learn and practice respect. Okay, so there's a video there that I think is really good. And also I put here the works cited. So basically my whole presentation is based off of a book called Positive Discipline in the Classroom by Dr. Jane Nelson. So this is her basically kind of her approach and theory. So I'm kind of just building off what she's talked about. I'm going to show you some things that I've learned from what I've read and kind of researched on my own. Okie dokie, so let's get started. So this session is positive discipline. Okay, so I guess we can start with what is positive discipline? So what is positive discipline? So positive discipline basically is a model that was created by Dr. Jane Nelson. And it consists of methods that involve students in finding solutions to problems, rather than just being the recipients of punishment and reward-based systems. So in other words, this is kind of like a way to really make classroom behavior something that is more student-oriented or student-centered, right? So in this, positive discipline basically wants to help students learn from their own mistakes, right? Help them to be able to manage their own emotions and be able to control their own behavior, right? Where we're not the ones that are forcing them to do something or forcing them to behave a certain way or forcing them to feel a certain way, but we are kind of looking at them and seeing them where they are and helping them kind of manage themselves in a way, right? And this is kind of, I think, an important concept, right? Because I think, especially as adults, all of us know what it feels like to have somebody that's trying to control us, right? Or somebody that is trying to always make us do something that we don't want to do, right? It's not a good feeling. So I think positive discipline kind of treats students as more like human beings, more like equals, whereas there's not so much the like, I'm up here as a teacher and you're down here as a student, right? Where we're kind of in this environment together and we're trying to help each other improve and do better. So if you go to the slide in the Google Drive, I have here session 1, positive discipline. And the first question I kind of want to ask you all is, do you believe that in order to help students do better, you have to first make them feel worse? Okay, so think about this question for a moment. Do you believe that in order to help students do better, you first have to make them feel worse? So I think this question is a little bit of a loaded question in terms of how you perceive students or how you perceive other people. Do you feel like you need to kind of control student behavior by making them feel a certain way about certain actions? Or do you feel like they can guide themselves and kind of figure out for themselves what behavior is good, what behavior is bad? Sorry if that's a little confusing, but we'll kind of flesh it out a little bit more. So do you believe that in order to help students do better, you first have to make them feel worse? So this is a yes or no answer. Okay, so if you responded yes, that you do think that sometimes in order to help students do better, you sometimes have to first make them feel worse. Okay, if you do kind of believe that a little bit, then you probably believe that students respond best to rewards and punishments in their environment. You might believe in the saying, spare the rod and spoil the child. You might believe that the teacher is above the student and deserves to be treated with respect. And in here, the key word is deserves to be treated with respect. You might believe that students need to be told what to do. And you might believe that misbehavior reflects a bad student that needs to be corrected. Now, to put this kind of in perspective, for me personally growing up, my parents definitely believed that in order to help students do better, or individuals or kids do better, they first had to make them feel worse, right? So one easy example is just getting spanked as a kid, or getting, I remember my parents would, when I got in trouble, they would make me stand in the corner, right, for a certain amount of time. Or if you have to scold a child or lecture them and they start crying, right? That is an example of kind of making them feel worse before making them feel better, right? Where they feel bad about what they do. You make them feel bad about what they do. You make them feel guilty for what they did, right? And I think this is something that is in play in many aspects of everyday life, right? Guilt is a big motivator, and it's a very strong way to make people do things that you want, right? Guilt. If you responded no and say that you do not believe that in order to help students do better, we first have to make them feel worse, then I think you probably feel like students need kind, firm action over rewards, lectures, and punishment, right? So you don't really believe in rewards, you don't really believe in lectures, and you don't really believe in punishment. And this is something that's kind of these are three big things, right? I think a lot of us are raised with rewards, lectures, and punishments, whether it's in school or in the household or in everyday life, right? The government basically controls a lot of people using these three things, right? If you don't believe that in order to help students do better, we first have to make them feel worse, then you might believe that our main goal is to help students experience caring, belonging, and significance. You might also believe that it takes time to build mutual trust, right? It doesn't happen right away. It's not something that we deserve. We don't deserve respect, but it's something that we have to earn, right? And that's kind of also a loaded thing, right? Some people think teachers deserve respect. Some people believe that teachers sometimes have to earn the respect, right? You might also think that students can think for themselves. And you might also think that misbehavior is not really a reflection of a bad student, but more so a reflection of a deeper need that maybe hasn't been addressed, right? So you see misbehavior more of as like a symptom, I guess, a symptom of something deeper, right? So yeah, those are kind of two different ways of thinking, right? So with that in mind, let's go through some case studies, okay? All right, so all these case studies are on the presentation. So the first case study is student number 1. So student number 1 is someone, student number 1 is somebody who is always jumping up and down and calling, teacher, teacher. He or she will sometimes come up to you in the middle of a lesson, ask a question, or motion for you to come to his or her desk so that they can show you something, right? This person can be very loud and disruptive, right? They can be, they just seem to need a lot of attention, right? Somebody that's constantly calling out for you. And in the middle of your class, right, this is not something that you really want, right? So, but in this moment, how does the student make you feel, right? Think about that. The student that's in your classroom, you're teaching a lesson, and the student's like, teacher, teacher, and then maybe talking to other students, talking to other people, walking around the classroom, right? How does a student make you feel? Okay, when you think about that. So for me, I think the student makes me feel a little bit annoyed, right? Just that's kind of like the first thing that I think about. Just kind of feel a little bit annoyed and a little bit like telling the student, you know, you need to sit down, just calm down. Like we'll get to you. You're not the only person in this classroom. You're not the center of the world, right? That's kind of the feeling I feel, right? And then we have student number 2. Okay, so student number 2. You're teaching in the classroom, and the student is always pushing and shoving to be first in line. Okay, when you're playing outside, the student is often causing trouble and taking things from other students. He's challenging the teacher's authority in class and can be stubborn, sometimes just flatly refusing to do what he or she is being told to do. How does this student make you feel? So for me, this student, I think, makes me feel a little bit angry, I think a little bit upset, especially with that last line where the student is kind of refusing blatantly to do what he or she is being told, right? It makes me feel a little upset, right? A little angry. That's kind of just my knee-jerk reaction, like my first feeling I feel. And you can feel differently, that's fine. I think this is just something, exercise in just thinking about how you would feel in these certain situations, right? Student number 3. Okay, this student comes to school in dirty clothes and picks fights with others. Other kids don't like him or want to sit by him because he's mean. He's been known to steal other kids' school supplies and then lying about it, saying that he has no idea who might have taken one thing or another. So in this case, this is a student that maybe you've caught stealing before, and an item goes missing, and you go to the student and you say, your friend here is missing this, you know, his or her pencil. Do you might have known where it could have gone? And the student might say to you, no, I don't know. I don't know where that pencil is. And later you just find that pencil in that student's desk, right? This is one of those situations where the student is being untrustworthy and kind of lying to you, lying to your face in some ways. How does this student make you feel? So once again, this is just how you feel personally. So personally, a student like this makes me feel a little bit, I think, disappointed. Because in this case, I want the student to do better, but he or she is not stepping up to the plate, right, in this case. Right? So I might feel a little bit disappointed. Okay, student number 4. So this student gives up before he or she starts anything. No matter how much coaxing you do, he or she won't try. This student does the best that he or she can to make him or herself invisible until you stop asking anything of that student. He or she will likely end up labeled with a learning disability because of his or her lack of effort and participation. So this is a student that, like right after you give instructions, is already like, I cannot tell my pen. Like I can't do it. Before they even like try, right? Or maybe they try and they just get frustrated, and they just say, I can't do it. I give up, right? And then no matter how much you say, you can do it, let me help you. Let me show you an easy way to do it. This student is just like constantly saying, can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it, right? How does a student make you feel? Okay, so this student, I think, for me, makes me feel a little bit like giving up in some cases. Like I feel a little bit desperate in terms of I'm in this situation, I'm doing everything I can to help this student, and the student is just not responding to it. So I think in this case, I feel a little bit like I can't help. I can't help the student because this student isn't willing to help him or herself, right? So yeah, so those are the 4 kind of case studies, right? Think about how these students make you feel. And I think many of you might have encountered these kinds of students in your classroom already, right? And I want you to stop and think about these kind of situations, right? When a student kind of makes you feel negatively or feel kind of these emotions of anger, right? Of frustration maybe, or of disappointment or annoyance, right? When students make you feel like this, do you think that students are acting this way to make you feel that way? Are they purposely acting the way they are to make you feel bad? Do you think that's the case, right? And how do your feelings or the way you feel in those situations inform the way you react to these situations? Okay, so I want you to think about kind of like this kind of like cause and effect kind of thing going on, right? The student's acting a certain way, right? It makes you feel a certain way. And then maybe you project kind of like this this image of this student trying to make you feel, right? Angry, annoyed, hurt, disappointed, hopeless, helpless, frustrated, right? And that in a way informs the way that you act, or the way that you teach, or the way that you really basically you react to these situations and how you respond to them, right? So I guess just kind of think about that for a moment. And I want to kind of give like a quote, right, from Positive Discipline in the Classroom. And the quote is, discouragement is the root of all misbehavior. Discouragement is the root of all misbehavior. So I think in these cases where you might feel like a student is trying to make you feel a certain way, think instead about the student, right? Instead of thinking about yourself and your feeling, think about the student and maybe why the student is acting in the way that he or she is, right? In these case studies, in case study 1, right? Where the student's going, student, teacher, right? Case study 2, when the student's being very aggressive and unfriendly, right? Case study 3, when the student is being deceptive and lying and coming to class with dirty clothes. And case study 4, where the student is just saying, I can't do it, tell my pen, right? So why do you think these students are acting in this way? So within the positive discipline model, I think a big idea is that all misbehavior comes from discouraged students, or students that have been discouraged in school and thus are not able to kind of find what they need in the classroom environment, right? And I think this kind of goes to this idea that all human beings need certain things, right? All human beings need 2 things, actually. All human beings need 2 things. All human beings need belonging, right? And they need significance. And I think if you think about yourself and the way that you behave on most occasions, right? The root of it all really is that you desire a sense of belonging and a sense of significance, right? And it goes kind of to this, like you have like the iceberg model, right? The iceberg model of human behavior, where at the top above the water, right? What you see in the students is their behavior, right? The way they're acting, right? The way that they do things, the way that they might not do things, right? And below that, right below the water, you have kind of like the student's belief behind that behavior. What do they believe that behavior is going to get them? What is their goal? What is the student's goal? And what is the student trying to say with this behavior? And below that is, what is the student's need, right? What is the student's need? And if we know that all students need belonging and significance, right, we can work from the bottom up to help address behaviors that we might not want in the classroom, right? So if you're able to address students' need for belonging significance, then you're able to kind of shift their ideas about how behavior will get them this need, right? And will help you understand the student's goal in terms of seeing a behavior and understanding what the student's goal is when he or she is acting a certain way. Does that make sense? So here I'd like to direct you towards in the Google Drive. So if you go, let's see, to the presentation resources and you go to the Google Drive, there is the mistaken goals chart here. So in the mistaken goals chart, this is something that came straight out of the book. It's part of the positive discipline model. And I think it's really great. This is something that like blew my mind when I saw it. And basically it separates, so it separates kind of the 4 case studies into 4 goals, right? 4 goals that children have, right? So in the first column, if you see, it says the child's goal is, right? For example, it can be undue attention, right? Maybe the student's not getting enough attention, and they believe that to keep others busy, and that what they need, what their goal is to keep others busy and to get special service, right? Another goal could be misguided power, right? The child's goal is to be the boss. Another goal could be revenge, right? The child's goal is to get even. And another could be assumed inadequacy, right? The child's goal is just to give up and be left alone, right? And from there, you have kind of the goal. And after that, you have the feeling. How does a parent and teacher feel, right? Based off this behavior, right? And your feelings can help you understand what the child's goal is, I think, in a lot of ways. So if maybe you feel annoyed, irritated, worried, or guilty, then maybe that student's goal really is to just get attention from you, right? If maybe you feel angry, challenged, threatened, or defeated, then the child's goal could be just a sense of misguided power, right? So it kind of goes through this thing where it helps you kind of understand the student based off of where you are at, right? Based off of how you are feeling, right? And then it even goes on to show you how you would tend to react, right? So in the case of the first case study where you have the student who's kind of like, oh, teacher, kind of coming up to you during the class and trying to get your attention at all times, right? And you feel annoyed or a little bit irritated, right? And it says maybe you can tend to react by reminding the student, oh, take a seat, please, right? Wait your turn, right? Or coaxing, being like, sit down, please, sit down, and we'll get to you in just a moment, right? Just kind of coaxing, right? Or doing the things for the child that he or she can do herself, right? So like, say, for example, it's just like, oh, come here. Can you help me write my name or something like that, right? And the other students are also, like, there's many students that need help, but this student is just particularly persistent, and you go and you do it for them, right? Just to get them to stop calling you, right? So this is kind of a reaction that could come from the way that you feel. And if the child's response is, right, to stop temporarily, but later resumes the same behavior, or maybe stops when they are given one-on-one attention, then the belief behind the child's behavior could be, I count or belong only when I'm being noticed or getting special service. I'm only important when I'm keeping you busy with me, right? So this is going back to their belief that what they're doing, their behavior, is helping them address their need for belonging, right? They're saying, I only belong or count when I'm getting one-on-one attention from you, the teacher, right? The next column talks about the coded message. Coded message. So what is the student trying to say through actions, right? They're trying to say, notice me, and involve me usefully, right? And the last column kind of talks about ways that parents and teachers can proactively empower the student, right? And some other responses that you can do to help address this root belief, right? Their belief in it when they if they're able to achieve this goal of undue attention, misguided power, revenge, or assumed inadequacy, then they're able to get what they need, which is belonging and significance. Right? So take a look at this mistaken goals chart. It's pretty good. I'll leave it to you. But I think it's really useful to have, right? It's really useful to talk about and think about. So yeah, let's see. So in the case, okay, sorry, getting a little bit lost here. Okay, so one thing that can be done in the situation, right, with each case study is to really think about students' needs, right? Students' needs in the classroom and how you can address their needs, not superficially, but really the base need, which is the need for belonging significance. And if you're able to establish a classroom environment that addresses that need, then ideally there will not be any, I guess, misbehavior in the classroom really so much, I would say. So yeah. So what is positive discipline? So positive discipline basically is a way to run the classroom that practices primarily respect. It teaches responsibility. It discourages violence. It promotes empathy. And it builds confidence. So the respect component of it is basically that if you are willing to show students the respect that they deserve, then they themselves are able to learn from you what respect is, right? How it is that respect is shown and given, right? A teacher's responsibility, because in these situations, what you want to do is help the students basically find a way where they can make a mistake and maybe feel a certain way, but be able to not be judged for it, right? And be able to kind of grow from it. It discourages violence in that you don't hit students and you don't bully them, I think. And there's many forms of bullying in the classroom that can take place. And I think bullying is probably a greater form of violence than hitting students. It promotes empathy. So basically it addresses kind of this idea where you are thinking about the needs of the students, right? You're thinking about the needs of the students and not trying to just patch up problems as they come up. And it builds confidence because it gives kind of some of the power back to the students. And let's see. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that you are wondering in particular. Maybe go ahead and send me a message. I think I put in a lot of the information in the Google Drive that kind of talks about student positive discipline and what it is, and kind of ways that it helps promote, I guess, a different understanding of students and their behavior, right? So something that I guess something that you could do on your own is to make kind of a list of characteristics that you'd like for your students to develop, right? So kind of take a piece of paper, take some time, and write down on that piece of paper the things that you'd like for your students. What is it that's your goal as a teacher to teach students, right? And I think for most of us, it's not really just to teach English, right? I think in a lot of ways, we'd like to teach students more than just, how to read, how to write, how to speak, or say English words or say English phrases, right? We'd like to teach students like things like responsibility. We like to teach them to think of things like, like courage, maybe thinking in terms of courage, thinking in terms of being able to self-regulate, right? Respect others, right? And I think this kind of goes towards, I also provided in, sorry, it's a little bit all over the place, but in the link, I provided also a link to a video, which is the 6 core strengths for healthy child development. And it basically talks about the progression of children, right? And things that they have to learn before they're able to learn respect, right? And it kind of talks about basically when children first come into the world, right? The first relationship that they have is with their parents, right? And with their parents, they first need to develop kind of a relationship with their parents, like a sense of attachment, right? Where the mother or the caregiver is somebody that provides everything for the child, right? And the child needs to be able to form a healthy sense of attachment to that caregiver, right? Because they rely on this caregiver. And over time, right, through this relationship with the caregiver, they're able to learn self-regulation, right? They're able to learn to notice and control their urges, right? Things such as hunger and sleep, or things such as frustration, anger, and fear, right? And kind of being able to learn how to regulate from their parents, right? Learn how to contain impulses and not just do whatever they want and do whatever they feel like, right? They're able to self-regulate, right? Once students are able to self-regulate, they then have an ability to affiliate or be part of a group, right? Because before you're able to self-regulate, it's difficult for you to be part of a group, right? Because in the group dynamic, right, you have to be able to join with others. You have to be able to contribute. You have to be able to see a little bit beyond yourself, right, and affiliate with others, right? So the next stage is affiliation, right? And after affiliation kind of comes the sense of attunement, right? Being aware that others exist and that there are other people have needs that are different from yours. Other people have different interests, different values, different strengths, right? So then you kind of move from basically attachment, right, to self-regulation, to affiliation, and then to attunement with others, right? And after you become attuned with others and you start realizing that maybe you're not the only person in this world, right? Then you start to not only see differences in other people, but you begin to accept the differences and see these differences as kind of important, right? You're able to tolerate other people, right? It's kind of a progression, right? It's you develop tolerance if you are exposed to different things. You're just exposed to diversity, right? You're able to develop tolerance, and then after you're able to develop tolerance and accept differences, then you're able to develop respect, right? To be able to find not only be able to accept differences, but also be able to find value in those differences, right? Be able to see differences as something that's important in society, right? So I think this is also another key component that kind of fits in well with positive discipline and this idea of respect, right? Respect in the classroom. I think a lot of people talk about respect in the classroom when they talk about classroom management, when they talk about the teacher-student relationship, right? So I think this is an important concept also to think about. What else? Right, so after you develop kind of these characteristics, make this list of characteristics that you want for your students to develop, I think maybe you could, after you write that list, maybe flip it over and kind of make a list of behavioral challenges that you might be facing in the classroom. Like, what are some things that students are doing in the classroom that you don't like to see, and that maybe are challenging you as a teacher, right? So examples could be like pushing other students, shouting in class, hitting other students, calling out your name. I don't know, whatever you think serves for you as a behavior challenge that you face in the classroom. So on one side of your piece of paper, you would have the characteristics you'd like your students to develop, and the other side, you have kind of the list of the behavioral challenges that you might face. Now, using that list, both those lists, you want to then see how you can use the behavioral challenges as an opportunity to help teach the characteristics that you would like for your students to develop. So this is really the core practical element of positive discipline, where you see the behavioral challenges and you know what characteristics you'd like for your students to develop, and you use the behavioral challenges to help you as an opportunity or as a window of opportunity to help you or guide as a springboard from which to teach the characteristics you'd like for your students to develop, right? So you're using what you have to develop something that you would like, right? So this is really a key component of positive discipline, where you're not seeing the behavior challenges and just writing them off or being upset about them or just reacting to them, and not kind of just trying to squelch them and just kind of quiet them down and do everything you can to make your classroom perfect and neat and everything, right? Because it's natural. It's natural for the classroom to be a little bit crazy, right? Learning is crazy, right? Education is a little bit crazy, right? I think if you have a perfect classroom where no children are talking and everyone's sitting nicely, and or people are just writing, like you see that in Thai classrooms. Sorry. So you see that in Thai classrooms where students are kind of just head down writing, and the teacher's in the front with a stick, kind of like just lecturing, right? So you've seen this before. So this, I would say, is a worse classroom than one where students are kind of maybe up and about, kind of like talking to each other and kind of moving around the classroom and maybe a little bit out of control, but where the teacher doesn't have a stick. The teacher is not just talking at the students, but involving them in discussion, involving them in activities, involving them in different things, right? There's naturally going to be more problems that arise, I think, but it is also much more student-centered, right? And it helps students develop themselves, right? It helps them change behaviors that come up in the classroom and helps them see those behaviors, and you use those behaviors as a springboard to help you develop good characteristics, right? Okay, so right, so I think it's getting a little bit late, but one thing you can start thinking about is telling versus asking, right? When you tell a student, stop talking and sit down quietly, please. Stop talking, sit down quietly, right? They're talking and they're standing up. You say, stop talking, sit down quietly. Does that help you? Does that help you develop any of the characteristics that you'd like for your students to have, right? So unless one of your characteristics is, I just want them to be obedient, I want them to listen to instructions, right? If those are the characteristics that you want for your students, then you're doing a good job. You're telling them, stop talking and sit down quietly, you need to learn to listen to me. Then you're achieving that goal. But say your goal is different, right? The characteristic that you want is responsibility. You want students to start thinking for themselves. Then this saying, stop talking, sit down quietly, is not going to help you achieve that, right? Instead, you got to start thinking, how can I help them think for themselves? How can I help them be responsible for their actions? So in this case, one way is, instead of by telling, you ask. You say, who can show me how we sit down when you are ready for the next lesson, for example? Or you can say, sit down. What does sit down mean? Who knows what sit down means, right? Can you show me? What does that look like, right? Where you're kind of engaging the students in the process of helping them understand what it is that you are asking for, right? Instead of just telling them and forcing them to do something that you want, right? And I think with this as well, with positive discipline, another component is punishment, right? Where punishment only serves to humiliate students, and it only serves to discourage students, right? Where it will cause students to do basically one of three things, right? It'll make them rebel, it'll make them feel like they need to get some revenge, or they'll retreat, right, if you punish a student. So I think punishment is not part of the positive discipline model. That's something that you want to take out. Another thing that is on the flip side of punishment is rewarding. So rewarding is something that I think has been misunderstood in a lot of ways in the classroom, where we think that rewarding is, and positive reinforcement is the same as positive discipline, where that's not the case, right? Rewarding is basically the same coin as punishment. It's just the other side, right? You're using behaviorism, where you are kind of treating a person as I want to say kind of like an animal, I guess, in a way where you're saying like, if you do this, this is the consequence, or if you do this, this is what you will get, right? So I think in the long term, rewarding does the same thing as punishment, where it ultimately serves to discourage the student in the long run, because students in the end start doing things for reward rather than for the thing itself, right? And when they don't get a reward, they get discouraged, right? So when a teacher's kindness involves rewards, and when firmness involves punishment, children can become confused and fearful of the judgments about their own personal worth or worthiness, right? They start thinking, am I a good boy? Am I a good girl? Or am I a bad girl? Or am I a bad boy in this moment, right? And I think that's something you don't want students to ask themselves. You don't want them to think in terms of, am I good or am I bad, right? Because feelings are always something that students will have, right? And their actions are also something that they will have and you will have, right? But it isn't them, right? Their feelings are not them. Their actions are not them, right? They are still worth, they're worth much more than their actions. They're worth much more than their feelings, right? And you have to be able to separate the action from the person, right? And I just kind of want to, I guess, end the session with, so I think all the resources are out there. If you have questions, ask me. I'm just kind of throwing things at you. And it's late for me too. I'm a little bit tired. And my brain's a little wonky. But I think I just want to leave you with kind of this quote by Alfred Adler. Just to kind of think about. And it goes, an educator's most important task, one might say his or her holy duty, is to see to it that no child is discouraged at school, and that a child who enters school already discouraged regains his or her confidence through his or her school and his or her teacher. This goes hand in hand with the vocation of the educator. For education is possible only with children who look hopefully and joyfully upon the future. So I think really this speaks to a lot of the ideas that I've kind of talked about. I kind of wish this was more of a discussion where we could kind of talk about things and I can kind of see your reaction and kind of be able to gauge, like, understanding and gauge, like, if you're able to kind of grasp the concepts. And I kind of wish we were able to really, like, perform some of the exercises and kind of have the presentation also for you to see. But I think this is kind of just a start, right? Something that I'd like you to kind of start thinking about. And maybe if you have questions about it or would like to comment about it, if you could go to the Google forum and maybe post something or ask something, or you can ask something of me individually or anyone on the curriculum team, right? I think we'd be more than happy to help out in any way that we can. Okie doke. So that'll be the end of session 1. Next session will be next week on Friday. And will be kind of more practical use of some of the concepts we talked about today. Okay, cool. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.